Well, welcome back to Westminster on Article 50 Day. Let's get the view now from the opinion pages of today's newspapers. The Conservative MP and former Policing Minister Nick Herbert writes in The Guardian of his fears over how the UK's divorce from Europe is going to play out. But in The Telegraph, his party colleague Dominic Raab MP says Britain will begin negotiations with economic self-confidence and political ambition. The Times is worried. It says the process will be complicated and fraught with risk as well as opportunity. The Daily Mail, however, hails today as a momentous day for Britain, praising Theresa May for not wavering in putting the electorate's decision into effect. The Daily Mirror says the Prime Minister must get the right deal for the UK, and it believes our children's birthright is at stake as much as our own. And in the Times, their cartoonist Peter Brooks has Theresa May, Liam Fox, Boris Johnson and David Davis. Not so much Folies Bergère. They're showing off their legs in the can on the White Cliffs of Dover under the heading Folly Brexit. While Adams in The Telegraph has the Prime Minister cast as Buzz Lightyear, fists clenched as she declares to infinity and beyond. Well, joining me are Ed Miliband's former advisor, Ayesha Hazarika, and the former Conservative MP and Minister, Esther McVey. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
Hello. I don't know if you've been married, let alone divorced, but what Nick Herbert says here is, he quotes Margaret Atwood, the Canadian novelist, "A divorce is like an amputation. You survive, but there's less of you." Is that how it feels to you, this Brexit?
No, and we've got to make sure that doesn't happen, because I think there are different types of divorces, without doubt. You can have an acrimonious one, you can have a very positive one, and then you do think about the children.
Uncoupling.
Yeah, and whether we'll be doing that, I'm not sure. So I think you have to be mindful. What are the stages? I was thinking about that. Yes, there are the emotions, there are the financial implications, and then there are the long-term friendship that you want to get into in the end. And I think why Dominic Raab's piece was good, because he said, be patient, be a good friend, ensure you support people, but be mindful of how positive we can be and what a good sort of negotiating position we have.
But even with his own piece, there are sort of contradictions, in as much as he says, oh, we mustn't have too much schadenfreude, joy in the discomfort of the EU. And then he goes on to say, the EU faces huge challenges. The Eurozone festers. Greece's youth unemployment is 45%. Its economy contracted. The IMF and the EU are haggling over austerity conditions for another bailout. Capital flight from Greek banks gathers pace. Actually, a lot of economic experts say the Eurozone is doing quite well at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is the problem. We really don't know what is going to happen. It's absolutely fine to say, look, let's put our best foot forward, let's be positive. Nobody knows how this is going to turn out. It is a leap in the dark with a blindfold on, and none of the ministers in charge of Brexit seem to really understand what's going to shake down. It may be okay, but I've spoken to people, I was a Remainer, but I have spoken to people who voted Leave in Labour constituencies, and they don't regret their decision. But even they are very concerned about what's going to happen to their small businesses, what's going to happen to the economy. And the interesting thing I think we've kind of seen just in the last couple of days is a softening on the language on what's going to happen. Even David Davis on Question Time the other night said, look, immigration is possibly not going to fall. It could go up as well as go down. So everything is just so uncertain.
All of those points are right. And I was with a big business group last night, and I think certainty is what people want. They do want to know the way forward, but I think people need to know and be quite assured of the positive negotiating position we've got. So you talk about a 68 billion annual deficit with Europe. We know already that if we both went on to Watto rules, actually the EU would be worse off than the UK, and those are the Civitas figures there. So we work from a position of power, but know that we want to be good friends in the end, and we've come straight out. We want a free trading friendship, and we can work on that. And equally, one point that hasn't been raised at the moment in one of these articles was talking about why we joined in the first place. UK was looking for a new position for itself, and France was always afraid of the American-Anglo relationship. And actually, they'll be very mindful of that now, because if the UK get a good deal with America, which they could well do, European companies will be coming to the UK to actually be able to have that deal with America.
But, I mean, if nothing else, today is an admission that Britain has been led and going in the wrong direction for the last 44 years. It's hardly a moment of celebration, is it? I mean, if you believe it's right to leave the European Union, we've been mistaken all these years.
No, I don't think that. I think what happened was the EU got bigger and bigger and bigger. Instead of it being what people had signed up to be, which was more about sort of business, which was more about a free market, it didn't. It became a political experiment, really, and ever tighter integration. And most British people said, we want to take back control, but we want to be a good friend. We are Europeans, we just don't want to be in the EU.
But I think a lot of that also is about a failure of domestic politics over successive governments, Labour government included, Conservative government. A lot of the Brexit vote and the vote about the EU referendum was a kind of howl of rage about things that are happening on a domestic level
and
as
I'd
well.
agree with that, and in a way they've always said, oh, we couldn't because of the EU legislation. Now it's time to actually say,
well, it will be interesting
exactly,
to see,
absolutely.
Right,
We've got to answer our own questions.
Peter Brooks has got them all showing a bit of leg, a la Daily Mail, doing the can-can on the cliff edge of Dover.
Checking us out wearing trousers today.
Fox, Johnson, Davis, May. Who's your favourite Brexiteer? Who do you think is going to win the day for Britain?
They're all going to, I think, this idea that it's only one person and we can only do one thing. No, I think I'd say all for one and one for all. And that's not just politicians, that's actually the country coming together. All for one, one for all.
I don't have a favourite Brexiteer.
Well, who do you have the most faith in?
To be honest, I've probably got the most faith in the Prime Minister. I genuinely get the impression that David Davis is not quite kind of clued up in terms of everything that's sort of happening.
Oh, yeah.
I suspect, though, I think the Prime Minister has approached this with a degree of sobriety which is entirely necessary because the country still is divided. The stakes are so high on this. I mean, you can call people like me Ramonas, but it's absolutely right and proper to ask searching questions about what a deal will look like, what's going to happen to the economy. And I think she has been quite kind of, so she knows the stakes are very, very high. And I think for all the uber Brexiteers, what's that phrase, kind of hubris before nemesis, I think, you know, everyone, in fact, I'd say this, everyone on both sides of the debate should kind of dial down the kind of hysteria.
It's quite right that everybody should keep us to account. So we're Ramonas, Remainers, whatever, should be asking those questions, as should Brexiteers.
Well, we're going to get the clearest idea of what Mrs May thinks when we do see the content of that letter. We'll look forward to that coming up at 12:30 today.